asking you about your final exams. That would
28th
be
April.
28th April.
April.
28th of April, right? So which means 3 plus another 3, at least around 5 weeks or so you'll certainly get for the uh, session. So it shouldn't be a problem. We don't have too many of them left anyway. Today we are going to take up question tags and mode both. Once that is done, I don't think maybe there'll be conditionals and quantifiers and all. I don't see that there are any major grammar topics. You'll be having more of writing, I think a module full of writing and all that. So it shouldn't be a
Yes,
problem. We
ma'am.
have enough time to discuss. Okay. Right. Okay, let's start for today then.
Ma'am,
The
in
Yes.
exam, how are they asking about these writing modules?
Writing modules, you will have questions based on the lectures. They won't ask you to write anything because we don't have any descriptive questions for the exams. Don't have a space for that. But yes, whatever you hear in the lecture, you will get something at the definitional levels or even applicational levels. It would be modeled after your graded assignments, right? However, or whatever the kind of questions you have, the patterns that you see in the graded assignments would be the ones which you can expect in the finals too. But no descriptive questions. So we don't usually give descriptive questions for this exam. Okay.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So let's start discussing a little bit on, or maybe I will not share the screen right away because you'll have a tendency to look at it. We'll discuss a little bit on the question tag part and then we'll get to uh, the questions, right? So, question tags, what do you understand about them? In which language? I mean, in what form of the language do you find the use of question tags commonly? Do you find question tags in speech or do you find question tags in writing?
In speech form.
In speech form, right? So this is the first thing that you need to know about the question tag segment of the language. That is, it is more commonly used in the conversational English, which is the speech variety, than in the formal or the written format, right? In fact, you can say there's no use of question tags in any of the written format of the writing, right? We don't use them at all. And if you use it, it's considered informal to use question tags, right? So mostly in the conversational language. And what do they do? So if you have a question tag, let's take an example and then proceed with it, right? Give me an example for that. Any example, anything is fine.
He can swim, can't he?
So let's take this as an example. He can swim, right? Can't he? Right? For example, this is our sentence. Now, if you look at the sentence, the question tag is what? Which part of this question is the sentence is the question tag? The last part, right? Can't he? This one is your
Yes.
question tag. So, what do they do to the sentence? What is your actual sentence? He can swim, right? This is your actual sentence. Now, after having added this can't he or the question tag to it, what has happened to the sentence? There's some change that has occurred to it. He can swim, can't he? It has been converted
Became a
into,
question.
it became a question, and specifically what kind of a question? A yes or no question, right? So this is what basically a question tag does. It can convert all your, sentences into a yes or no question. Now, just because it is converted into a yes or no question, do you think when I, ask a question like this with a question tag, am I expecting an answer? I say, he can swim, can't he? Does this elicit a response? Am I asking this question because I want an answer from you? Not necessarily,
No,
right?
ma'am.
Although it converts this one into a question tag can convert your statement into a question. The thing that you need to keep in mind is that this doesn't necessarily require you to provide with an answer, right? I'm not looking for an answer from you. I am just, okay, if I'm not looking for an answer, then what am I doing? This is where the use of the question tag lies. I am not looking for an answer from you, right? But my question looks like a yes or no question. If I don't want an answer, what am I trying to do?
That mean you are unsure about that.
Yeah. Either I'm unsure, or more than that, I expect the listener to agree with my statement, right? I'm saying he can swim, can't he? So I'm not looking for a yes or no from you. I am basically using this particular form of sentence to, in the expectation that you will agree with my statement, which is he can swim, right? Or additionally, I might use this also when I'm not sure, like you said, right? Maybe I'm uncertain. Still, I don't expect you to answer my question as yes or no. This is just my method. This is just a particular modality where I express uncertainty, right? So we know to express uncertainty, we can also use the modal verb, right? Which modal verb? I'm not sure.
Might.
You can use might, or you can use could, you can use may, right? All of them expressing uncertainty in varying amounts, right? So you can use modal verbs also to do that. This is yet another way, yet another style of expressing uncertainty. In addition to the second thing why you use question tag, which is expecting the other person to agree with your statement. So it could be either of these, right? Now, how do I know? Right? If these are the two purposes, how do I know when am I expecting this? When am I expecting the person? When am I using a question tag to see whether the other person is agreeing with me? And when am I using the question tag to see if to express that I'm uncertain? How can I do that? This has got nothing to do with grammar. The answer to this question has got nothing to do with grammar. It has got more to do with the tonality, right? So if I think that the person, if I expect the other person to agree with me, for example, this statement, he can swim, can't he? If this is our statement, and I'm using this question tag to, show that I have an expectation that the other person will agree with me, then what will I use? I will use a rising tone or a falling tone. You know about rising falling tone, right? In the first module, we discussed pitch, rhythm, intonation, right? Remember?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So if I expect them to agree with me, then I use falling intonation, right? So no, falling intonation. So remember, when you ask question to somebody, usually the tone you use is rising tone, right? So similarly in this case also, if you think that the person will agree with you, then you're going to use a falling tone, right? Because your expectation is that this person will agree. So how will I say this statement? He can swim, can't he? With a falling tone. He can swim, can't he? Right? This is how I'm going to ask. But in case I'm not sure, the second thing for question tag, second condition is what? When you're uncertain. If you're uncertain and it is to express that uncertainty that you're using the question tag, then your tone is going to be a rising tone. He can swim, can't he? Right? See the difference between both. So this is the same sentence. Both the sentence can be used to express uncertainty, and the same sentence can be used to show that you expect the other person to agree with you. But it's a difference in the tone, the variation in the tone that is useful for the listener to understand whether you are asking them, basically unsure, or you're expecting them to agree with them, right? So this is why, because of this particular quality of the question tag, is why it is used more commonly in conversational English, right? There's a reason why we say that this is something that you see more in conversational English than in written English, right? Not because it doesn't look good or anything. That is one aspect, that it is less formalized, but because of the meaning for these kind of segments, it's mostly generated not just based on the grammatical elements, but also on, what we call as supra-segmental features, which is tone, stress, pitch, etc. Right? Because of this aspect, we shift their focus onto the conversational language. Understood this part?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so don't forget about this one. This is a very important point with regards to the fluency aspect. Using question tag, right? Use question tag in the rising tone when you do not know or you are unsure about the person's response. When you expect them to agree with you, confirm with what you are saying, then you use a falling tone, right? This is the application of the question tag in conversational English. Okay, so once that part is clear, now we'll look a little more closer at the structure, which is the grammar of the question tags, right? Very simple grammar, nothing much to, confuse yourself with. So the focus needs to be to create or to form a question tag. Your focus has to be on the verb of the sentence. Now, in this case, you have the sentence, he can swim. What do you see in the question tag? You see that the same verb has been taken into the question tag, right? Can't he? Can is taken already. And what kind of a verb is can? Is it a main verb or is it a helping verb or is it?
It's
It's a
helping.
model verb, right? Yeah, it's a model verb. So you know that if you have a model verb in the sentence, then the model verb is taken as it is into the question tag formation. So like you see here. Additionally, what you should know is if your sentence is a positive sentence, like he can swim, then the tag has to be negative, right? And if you had a sentence which was negative, say the same sentence, if I'm going to rewrite this as he cannot swim, right? If this is your sentence, then what would be your tag? Again,
Can
you're
he?
going to take the
Can he?
model verb can from here, right?
Yes.
Because we know that if we have model verbs, then that is taken directly into the question tag part. So we'll have can for sure and then
He.
he, right? So again, like in the previous case, you have the verb and then you also have the subject. In the actual sentence, you had the subject first and then the verb as per the word order in English, which is SVO, right? But in the question tag, you reverse that. Okay, the subject and the verb reverse their places, or it's also called inverse word order, right? So he can swim, can't he? Right? The sentence is positive, so your question tag is negative. You have added the negative counterpart of can, which is can't, right? Your sentence was, when it was negative, that is in the second case, he cannot swim. Your question tag has to be positive, which is can he, right? In the question tag, you reverse the verb and the subject's position, right? They've interchanged their places. And additionally, you see that in the negative question tag, right? Can't he? We don't write cannot he, right? We cannot write cannot he. Always the tag has to be in the contractive form, right? It always has to be can't he, not cannot he, right? This is the correct version of writing the question tag. So same applies to anything. For example, I changed the model verb, right? I changed to he could swim. Then what would be your tag?
Couldn't he?
Couldn't he, right? You don't write could not he. It has to be always couldn't he, right? And if I say he couldn't swim, then what would be your tag?
Could he?
Could he, right? So this is not applicable to the cases where you have a positive question tag. That is when your sentence is negative. Only in the case where you have an affirmative positive sentence and where the question tag is going to be negative, you have to make sure that you use the contractive form of the negative counterpart of the verb, right? You don't write cannot or could not or would not. You'll have to write wouldn't, couldn't, won't, can't, etc. Right? And again, this has a reason because this is something that is used predominantly in the speech. We know that in speech, we call it the spontaneous speech, right? We want to keep it like the name suggests spontaneous. There's spontaneity while you're speaking. So usually what happens when people are talking spontaneously, they're not going to bother with cannot and could not and all that. Usually the expression would be can't, couldn't, wouldn't, etc. Right? So this again is a rule that is taken from the actual use of the language in the society rather than, some grammatical rule. All of this comes from the rules based on language use. Okay, why contractive form and why question tags only in conversation English, all of this. right? Okay. Now, let's take another example. We took one with modal verbs. Let's take one with main verb. She mm,
Went to her friend's house.
she went to her. Okay, that we'll take up. But before that, let's use one proper verb. Let's say she dances beautifully. If this is your sentence, what would be your tag? She dances beautifully.
Doesn't see.
Doesn't she?
Ah. Doesn't she? Doesn't she? Now, how did you come up with this one? What told you that this is the question tag? So I told you that you will have to take the verb out of this one, right? When you're making question tag. But I don't see any dance here. Why?
Ma'am, dance is a main verb in simple present tense.
Yeah. See, in question tag, the verbs that are allowed to form a question tag are usually helping verbs, whether they are modal verbs or whether they are the do, does, did form of the be, or whether it's the is, are, were, was form of the be, or whether it is the have, has, had form of the be, right? All of these are what? They're all auxiliaries. Even modal verbs are also auxiliaries or what are also known as helping verbs. So in question tag, only these kind of verbs are allowed. You cannot use a main verb to form a question tag. In this case, because you had a question tag, you had to choose an auxiliary that was consistent with this one to form the question tag, and that is does, right? We use does here because of the subject, right? Subject is singular, right? And when you have a singular subject, the auxiliary helping verb that you can use here to replace the main verb is does, right? If it was plural, what would you use? They dance beautifully, then your tag would be
Don't they?
don't they, right? So you have to change the auxiliary verb based on the number of your subject. Here it is singular, so you use does. When will you use did?
When the affirmative sentence is in past.
When your verb is in past tense. So for example, I said she danced beautifully, right? Then your tag would be
Didn't see.
didn't she? Yeah, didn't she? Right? So did, had, etc. They are used based on the tense of the verb used, and do, does, has, have, they're used based on the number of the subject, right? But whatever it is, you know that you're not allowed to use the main verb to form a question tag. It always has to be an auxiliary verb, right? Okay, so this is the only rule that you need to know in forming the question tag. And additionally, the part that if you have a positive sentence, you will have to keep your tag negative. If you have a negative sentence, the tag has to be positive, right? Do we have anything else? Yeah, in cases where you have your other forms of verb, this is only the case. I have discussed only modal verbs and the main verb. Let's take one more example with other auxiliary verbs. She has eaten the mango. What would be the tag for this? She has eaten the mango.
Hasn't
Hasn't
she?
she?
Hasn't she? Right? Hasn't she? Okay. Uh, then one more.
Ma'am,
They,
with the
yes,
ought,
go on.
like she ought to obey
Hmm.
her parents.
She want to go with her parents. Okay, let's work on that. She want
No,
to,
it's ought to. O U G
sorry,
S
ought
T.
to.
Yeah.
Ought to, that will come to. We will come to that in a moment. Okay.
Okay.
What was I looking at? She is happy, for example. This is your sentence. Then what would be the tag? She is happy.
Isn't she?
Isn't she? Right? So look at all of this, right? When you're using an auxiliary verb, then obviously your tag is going to be very easy because all you have to do is take that auxiliary verb there and inverse it with the subject. The only difference would be when you have a main verb, right? There you will have to use do, does, or did based on the tense and the number of the subject that you have. Okay. So this is all about the structural part. Full check. Did I miss anything? I think no. Okay. So now the question that you were asking about ought to, we'll discuss it when we are looking at the questions. Okay. So there are quite a bit of them like that. Some of them which are a little different from the ones that we discussed. We'll see that when we are discussing the questions. Just 4 or 5 of them, but they're also important.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
ma'am, like in the model verbs may or might, that also contracted form only used or different form?
May or might, yeah. But one of it doesn't have a contractive form, right? The ones which doesn't have, you won't use, right? The
So ma'am,
others
we will
you
use
can.
may not or might not.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. You can write may not, might not. Yes, that's
Okay,
it.
ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So the first question here: you are an engineer. You're an engineer. So what would be the tag for this?
Aren't
Aren't
you?
you?
Aren't you? Right? You are an engineer, aren't you? Correct. She can't sing. Second
Can
one.
she?
Can she?
Can she? Right. She can sing. Can she? Next one. Donna plays baseball. Now this one has a main verb, right? Plays. It doesn't have an auxiliary.
Doesn't
Huh.
she?
Doesn't she? Donna
Doesn't.
plays baseball. Doesn't she? Now Donna is singular, so you'll use does. Uh, and it has to be negative because the sentence is positive, hence doesn't she. Okay, now in case of this particular sentence, if you have a sentence where you don't have the pronoun already, so in the question tag again you're not allowed to use proper nouns, right? So here you're saying doesn't she, you don't say doesn't Donna. See this? So whether
Yes.
your subject has a proper name or not, or whether it is a pronoun, you will use a corresponding pronoun in the question tag. You will not use the proper noun in case your question has one. Like in this case, you don't ask doesn't Donna, you will say doesn't she. In the question tag complex, you'll only have the pronouns, okay, not the proper name. So doesn't she. Okay, fourth one, he was your mentor. He was your mentor.
Wasn't he?
Yeah, wasn't he? He was your mentor, wasn't he? Fifth one, she was studying. She was studying.
Wasn't she?
Wasn't she? Same thing, right? You have the auxiliary, you do not have to do anything. Just take it and invert it. Wasn't she? Your mother is Irish. Your mother is Irish.
Isn't she?
Isn't she? Right? Again, the verb is. So auxiliary, you can take it as it is. He is working as a mechanic. He is working as a mechanic.
Isn't he?
Isn't he? Right? Isn't he? Simple. He does look like he has got something to say. What is the verb in the sentence? He does look like he has got something to say.
Ma'am, main verb or helping?
The verb in the sentence would be
Does look like.
Look,
that whole of the complex, right? Does look
Yes, ma'am.
like. He does look like. Okay. So what would be your question tag then? Can you take look or like or anything?
No, ma'am. It's
No.
doesn't he?
So, correct. You have to say you doesn't he because none of the, although you have a verb complex there, none of the other verbs can be used in question tag. Question tag can only take the auxiliary form. So you take does because it's he is singular, right? So you're going to use the word does, add the negative contraction to it since the given statement is positive and make your question tag. So he does look like he has got something to say, doesn't he? Right? Doesn't he is your question tag. Now, ninth one. They've waited a long time. They've waited a long time.
haven't they?
Haven't they? Right? Have is your verb. Haven't they? Right? It's written in contraction, but it is have. They have waited a long time. So haven't they? 10th one. You're from India. You're from India.
Aren't you?
Aren't you? Right? You're from India, aren't you? Right? 11th one. He plays chess. He plays chess.
Doesn't he?
Doesn't he? Doesn't he? Because you have a main verb which is plays. So you're going to use does because it is in the present tense and your subject is in singular form. 12th one. She paints beautifully. She paints beautifully. What would be the answer to this? She paints beautifully.
Doesn't she?
Doesn't she, right? Because again, paints is a main verb and it's in the simple present tense. Your subject is in the singular form. So all you have to take is the verb, auxiliary verb, does, right? She paints beautifully, doesn't she? The girls wanted to go home. The girls wanted to go home.
Didn't they?
Didn't they? Right? Didn't they? Now, one thing peculiar about did is for in the do, does, did complex, does is used for the singular subjects, do is used for the plural subjects. But in case of did, this is not applicable. So did can only show past tense, right? So both with the singular and the plural form, you're going to use did. Same it's the case of had. If you have had or did, then the number of the subject doesn't matter. For all the plural and the singular forms of the subject, you'll use did. So here the girls wanted to go home, didn't they? Wanted, the verb is in past tense, so you chose did, right? If I said the girl wanted to go home, then what would be the tag? Instead of girls, if I say the girl, then only the pronoun will change, right?
Didn't she? Yeah.
Didn't she? Only the pronoun will change. The verb used will not be changed. Okay. 14th one. Sorry, I am late again. Yeah. Okay. From here begins your question tags, which work in a little different format than the ones you have seen now. Sorry, I am late again.
Aren't I? Like,
So here you will not say, am I not, or any other forms of question tag. Here the answer is, aren't I? Sorry, I am late again. Aren't I? Now there's a mismatch. Am is usually the verb that is used for the singular first person form. But because it's a peculiar form of an auxiliary verb, the question tag cannot be am and I because there's nothing that exists in that format. So the closer one that you can use with it would be aren't I. Okay, so by convention, whenever you have the am form of verb, which is the first person singular form of the verb, the question tag is always going to be aren't I, right? So what if I have, a negative statement? If I say, I am not late, then
am I?
then am I, right? Then you don't ask are I, right? This one is only for the case where you use a negative tag, right? That is when your sentence is positive. Instead of I am late again, if I said I am not late, if that was my sentence, then your question tag is going to be am I? I am not late, am I? Right? But I am late again, aren't I? Okay, so keep this distinction in mind. 15th one. Martin used to live in Scotland. Martin used to live in Scotland.
Wouldn't he?
Used to. Used to, this indicates what? Used to,
Past.
past tense, right? So
Yes.
this is past tense and then you don't have an auxiliary. In such case, what would you replace it with?
Don't he?
Didn't.
Past tense. Didn't, yes. It's past tense, so
Didn't.
you'll have to use did. Martin used to live in Scotland, didn't he? Right? Didn't he? Used to is again, it's not an auxiliary verb, so you cannot take it to the question tag. You can't use it there. But we know that used to indicates past tense, right? So since it's past tense and we don't have any auxiliary available, we know the choice has to be did, right? So didn't he? Martin used to live in Scotland, didn't he? Okay, now this is the question that you were asking. We ought to start now, really. We ought to start now, really. What do you think would be the answer for this? We ought to start now. Really.
Shouldn't we?
Do
Yes.
we?
So there are two possible options here. One is definitely should, right? We ought to start now, really. Shouldn't we? This is one option. You can also see oughtn't we, right? So ought apostrophe ng, which is in the contractive form of ought not, and then we, right? Both are allowed. Both are grammatically correct, right? But the more common one is shouldn't we, obviously, right? More commonly used one is shouldn't we, but oughtn't we is also not wrong. Grammatically, that is correct as well. But you will see that the popular version or the ones that you usually see in people's conversations would be shouldn't, right? So both the options are correct, but the more popular variety is the shouldn't one form. Okay. So we ought to start now, really, shouldn't we? We ought to start now, really, oughtn't we? Okay, both are correct. 17th, remind me this evening. Remind me this evening. What is the nature of this sentence? What kind of a
Imperative
sentence is this? This is an imperative sentence, which means no subject, it's a command, right?
Yes,
But we have a subject. We know the subject in the imperative statement is
it.
by default you, right? So when you say remind me this evening, you're basically saying you remind me this evening, right? So this is an imperative sentence. What would the question tag of this look like? What do you think it would be? The subject is you, though it is not given, the conceptual subject is you, which means one part of the tag is going to be you. But what would be the verb?
Can you?
So in this case, again, like we said, there are multiple options available. If it's an imperative sentence, right, you can use, mostly you will use will you, but you can also use
Yeah.
can you, right? The normal one, the more commonly used variety of question tag with an imperative statement is will you. Remind me this evening, will you? Right. Close the door, will you? Okay, pass me the pen, will you? Right? So, will you is the more commonly used variety over can you, although we don't have cases where it has been marked wrong, but it's not a very commonly used thing. When you say not commonly used, it means that it has less approval over the other. That's what we mean. Maybe not wrong grammatically, but less approved of in use. And this part, approval part, is important in the language use part because this is the one that you're going to use to converse to people, right? So it shouldn't sound odd. So it's always good to go with the more commonly used one for enhancing the comprehensibility factor, that people understand you better. Okay, the next one is also the same, 18th one. Yes.
Ma'am, so in imperative sentence, we don't use negative form.
No, no. Because we can't form. Can you give me an example of a negative imperative sentence? Say something like, don't close the door, right? Even in that case, you will have to say will you, right? But most of the cases, your imperative sentence is going to look like this. So we don't have a negative. It's tough to create a negative format for a negative structure for the imperative sentences, right? Because their nature is usually of command and request and all that. So this is usually the tag that we use. And even in the case you have a negative verb in your sentence, the tag is going to be will you. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Okay. So next one, 18, pass me that pen. This is again an imperative sentence. So the tag is
Will
going
you?
to be, will you? Pass me that pen. Will you? Then 19th one is again, I think, imperative. Come here a
Will
minute.
you?
Come here a minute. Will you? Okay. Come here a minute. Will you? 20th one, this is the last one. And this is also an imperative, but it's a separate kind of an imperative. Okay. Let's have the meeting now. Let's have the meeting now.
Shall we?
Shall we? Right? Let's have the meeting now. Shall we? Right? all these let's form of sentences. And it's a kind of imperative sentence, right, with a subjunctive mood. So all of such sentences are known to take the question tag shall and whatever your subject is. So shall we? Let's have the meeting now. Shall we? Let's go for a movie tomorrow. Shall we? Right? This imperative sentences remind me the evening. I told you the approved version is always will you. And can you is permitted. More kind of verbs are permitted with this because of the lack of a clear, formulated sentence in here, because of the lack of subject. You see that almost there are many options available for the question tag creation in imperative sentences. But the more popularly used or the one which has more approval is definitely will you. So instead of will you can also say can you can say would you, could you, won't you. All of those things are possible. You're asking negative question tag, no, Tanishka? So we use negative question tag like won't you, wouldn't you, all of that can be used, but that can be used even here, right? Remind me this evening. Even here I can ask won't you. I can ask will you. I can also ask won't you. So this negative and positive divide that you have in the case of other questions, that if you have a positive statement, then you use a negative tag. And if you have a negative statement, then you use a positive tag. This one doesn't exist for imperative sentences. Like in this case, you can say, remind me this evening, will you? You can also say, remind me this evening, won't you? All right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that's all on the question tag. We have about 15 minutes left. I want to utilize that time to talk to you about this very small topic called mood. It usually comes along with the tense aspect distinctions of verb. So we talk about the tense aspect and mode of the verb, right? So from that, you should understand that mode is the grammatical element that is associated with the verb in a sentence, right? Basically, verb gives you an idea about the mood, right? But what is mood? Mood is very closely linked to what we discussed in the lectures on modal verbs, right? What do modal verbs do? They express different modalities, right? They show you expressions of possibilities, expressions of abilities, expressions of certainties, obligation, necessity, uh, what else? Threat, promise, intention, right? These are all the various modalities that the modal verbs can express. Similarly, the verb mode also works in that particular way. We know that tense of a verb basically tells you about the time of the action, tells you whether an action has happened in the past time, present time, or the future time. Aspects tell you how exactly these actions have happened, the nature of these actions in the past, present, or future time. Mood tells you the modality, right? What is the actual expression? What is the attitude of the speaker while the delivery of the action took place, right? So there are many types of modes in English, right? Or in fact, there are many kinds of grammatical modes. But in the English language, we talk about mostly we talk about three main types of modes, which are indicative, imperative, and subjunctive, right? These are the three modes that are used more commonly in the English language. There are many, many more modes, like there's something called optative mode, right? There's something called real mode and unreal mode, right? All of those exist, but those distinctions we don't bring about in our language, which is the English language. The commonly used ones here, or the commonly found mode in English language, are three: indicative, subjunctive, and imperative, right? This much is what you need to know about mode. Now, what about indicative mode, subjunctive mode, and imperative mode? What do you know about them? So if your given statement looks more like a factual statement, okay, a factual statement, or a plain, simple statement, right? It doesn't express much of, it doesn't tell you anything about the attitude of the agent involved, the subject involved, right? It's a factual statement, like the sun rises in the east. Okay. So what is this? Do you get any model expression from this? Nothing. You're not aware of any attitude of the speaker or the agent or anything. It doesn't apply there. It's a simple factual statement. If this is how the sentences are, then we call them that the sentences are in indicative mode. They just indicate something. That's all. There's nothing else involved there. But if the sentence expresses some kind of an opinion, which is, say, it talks about a hypothetical situation, it talks about certain emotions, or it is something like a polite request, okay, or it is in the form of some kind of a wish, right? Then the mood is subjunctive, right? So, for example, sentences like, if I was rich, if I were rich, I would have bought a huge bungalow for myself. Now, what is the mood here? This is a subjunctive mood because you're talking about a hypothetical situation, an unreal situation, an imaginary situation, right? So that is the mood being used here. That is the tone, that is the attitude of the verb that is used here. The agent that's used here. So this is called a subjunctive mode, right? Now, imperative mode, can you tell me even without I telling you anything about it? This has to be mostly in the form of commands,
Command.
request, or advice, right? It can be either a command, it can be advice, it can be a request, right? Now, there's a difference, right? Subjunctive mode also shows request, but what kind of request? Polite request, very polite request. That would be a subjunctive mode statement, okay, or a statement in subjunctive mode. If it's a usual request, then you would say that it's an imperative. It's in the imperative mode. So commands, normal requests, advice, prohibitions, right? When you're prohibiting somebody or something, like usually laws and rules that are set for people, these are all in which mode? Imperative mode. Okay. So these are the only three. It's a very simple topic. There isn't much to invest in this also, and not an extremely necessary one also. But since we talk about verb, the usual method is to talk about tense, aspect, mood, right? In English, it is not a very problematic thing, but then because we have very limited number of grammatical mode, in some other languages, they have too many grammatical modes. So it becomes an important category there. But it is, although not very important for the grammatical understanding in English, it's good to know these things as well, right? Okay. Let's look at a few examples here. The river flows under the bridge. Okay, you just tell me the modes, whether indicative, subjunctive, or imperative.
Indicative.
Indicative.
Right. This is an indicative one because do you get any idea of a command or request or wish or anything here? Nothing. Right. It's a plain statement, a factual statement, or to the best of our knowledge, a normal, simple declarative statement. So indicative mode. Now, the next one, how about that? I will do the work tonight.
Indicative.
Indicative again, right? There is no special attitude that is being expressed here. This is also indicative. I will do the work tonight is indicative. He told me that he had finished the work. Sorry. He told me that he had finished the work.
Indicative.
Indicative. Others, are you following? Why we marked all the first three, right? All the three of them are indicative, right? Because they do not show any change in the expression or attitude. It's simply a plain statement. What happened to the screen? Okay. Fourth one, God bless you. God bless you.
Imperative.
Subjunctive.
Subjunctive, right? Why is it subjunctive and not imperative? I'm wishing you, right? So anything that indicates a wish will have to be in the subjunctive mode, right? So God bless you, or any other thing. We'll see. Maybe if we have more sentences, they should have. So anything that has an element of wish or an element of polite request or opinion, so on and so forth, will have to be in the or hypothetical situation. It will have to be in subjunctive mode. So this one is subjunctive mode. God bless you. Then I am hoping to get a rise soon. I am hoping to get a
Subjunctive.
rise.
Subjunctive.
Why is it subjunctive?
And because he's hoping for something,
Wishing for
Hmm.
something.
so it's
Hope is
unrealistic.
different from wishing, right?
But he's
When I say
imagining like
he is imagining. He's not imagining. He's making a statement with the help of the verb hope. That's all. I hope so and so happens. I'm not saying I wish so and so happened, right? Wish and hope are two different verbs. I hope to. So, for example, say I hope to deliver this product by tomorrow. Does it have subjunctive mood? No,
it looks
right? This
like
is
that.
again this is an indicative mode, right? There is no element of wish involved here. So understand this difference. Wish and hope are two different things, right? Hope
Yes,
is used as a more active verb. It is not used as the way we use wish. Okay. So just because you have the word hope, which looks a bit similar to wish, don't go ahead and mark it as subjunctive. This is an indicative mode statement. Okay. Sixth one is do sit down. Do sit down.
imperative,
Imperative, right? Imperative. Seventh one, I wish I had passed the test.
subjunctive,
I wish I had passed the test. Subjunctive. Okay. Then comes eighth one, I would rather you. What is? I would rather you stay till tomorrow. I would rather wanted you stay till tomorrow. Something is missing there. I think it should have
yes,
been I would rather wanted you stay till tomorrow. Yes. Okay. In any case,
indicative,
this is indicative, right? This is indicative. Yeah. Okay. Ninth one, I will have plenty of time tomorrow. I will have plenty of time tomorrow.
Indicative.
Indicative. This is also indicative. Be nice, sweet child. Be
Subjunctive.
nice. Is it subjunctive? Be nice, sweet child. You're telling somebody be nice.
imperative,
Imperative, right? This is imperative, right? Be nice, sweet child. So, imperative mode. 11th one, it has been raining since last night. It's very easy.
indicative,
Indicate.
Indicative. Indicative. He takes great pride in his work.
indicative,
Indicative.
He takes great pride in his work is what? Indicative, right? He takes great pride. Yeah. Next one. It is time we started. It is time we started.
indicative,
Indicative, right? And the last one here, by this time tomorrow, I will have reached my home.
Indicative.
Indicative, right? So what do you make of this? That most of the sentences in English would be normally in the indicative form, right? Most of the sentences are going to be in indicative. Only the special cases are imperative. That is clear cut, in case there's a command or request or advice, right? Then it is an imperative or a prohibition, right? Something like an order. So then it has to be imperative. And in case you're talking about a hypothetical imaginatory situation, or you're making a wish for something, or if you're making a polite request and opinion of something, then it is subjunctive. Now, all of these situations are rare, or say rarer than the other sentences, which you normally say, right? So indicative mode would be the highest on the order. Just keep this in mind. This is not like I told you much of a value addition. If you know your model verbs, then modes don't make much of a difference to how you understand this, right? Because English don't need it. The prevalence of mode is not that great in English as opposed to some other languages. But since it's a part of the module, it's good that we discuss and have an understanding of it. Okay. All right. Any questions?
Ma'am.
No? Is this clear for you?
Ma'am.
Yeah, Tanishka.
Ma'am, you told that be nice, sweet child is an imperative
Correct.
mode. But in God bless you, we use subjunctive mode. It sounds similar to that.
God bless you is a wish, right? Be nice, sweet child is not a wish, is it?
But it is also kind of blessing, no? Like God bless you, we are giving something.
No.
It's polite request. Yeah, we can say that. No,
When you say you're telling somebody be nice, sweet child, you're not wishing that person, are we?
No,
God
ma'am.
bless you is different. You're imparting blessings to somebody. Basically, you're saying, may God bless you. It's a shortened version of may God bless you, right? You're wishing that the God blesses. But be nice is basically like a command. That's all. Be nice, sweet child. Right? There's a difference between both.
Okay, ma'am.
ma'am,
Okay.
every imperative sentence must have a imperative mood now. Can you see?
Ready? Every imperative sentence, come again.
Must must have imperative mood.
Correct. Yes. Every imperative sentence will be in imperative mode by default. Sure.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Anything else?
No, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
We can
Right.
try.
If you don't have questions, we'll close today's session. Okay. See you again
Yeah.
next week.
Thank
Okay,
you, ma'am.
everyone. Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. See you again.